In our leading story this morning, Zimbabwe's army denied it had carried out a coup after taking over the state broadcaster in the early hours of Wednesday, even as military vehicles took to the streets of Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, and prolonged gunfire was heard near the presidential residence. Zimbabwe's top military commander waded into an escalating feud within the country's governing party, issuing a rare warning to President Robert Mugabe. Commander General Constantine Chiwenga, who leads the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, said, when it comes to matters of protecting our revolution, the military will not hesitate to step in. Military officers yesterday read an address live on state TV saying President Robert Mugabe is safe and his security is guaranteed.
Good morning, Zimbabwe. Fellow Zimbabweans. Following the address we made on 13 November 2017, which we believe our main broadcaster, Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, and the Herald were directed not to publicize the situation in our country, has moved to another level. Firstly, we wish to assure the nation that His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and Commander-in-Chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, Comrade R.G. Mugabe, and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice.
Well, Zimbabwean journalist Frank Chikawore joins us on the phone line. Good morning to you, Frank. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Can you give us an update on the situation in Zimbabwe?
Well, traffic is moving slowly into the central business district in the capital, where there is a hiatus of activity from the army who are maintaining peace and order. As I'm speaking, we are getting information that some of the ministers have been arrested, but we cannot independently verify that at this juncture.
There were some reports that President Robert Mugabe and his family are not allowed to leave the presidential compound. Is that true? And if so, why?
Well, what we have heard is that the president and his wife are safe, according to the army officials who broadcast their statement live on state television. As I'm speaking right now, all programming is now being controlled by the army at the station.
And Frank, why has the army taken it upon themselves to control all broadcasting of media from the ZBC? Why have they taken over the state broadcaster?
Well, from the statement that was issued by statement, they are saying that Constantine Chiwenga, the army commander's statement, was actually blocked from being aired. And as I'm talking to you right now, the broadcast his statement that he issued on Monday, where he was saying that the army would step in if the situation degenerates into chaos. They're saying that they are going to arrest all criminals around President Mugabe, who are making the people suffer.
I think we will stay in touch with you. Thank you so much for giving us that update and joining us here on Voga Africa this morning. We are also joined by international political analyst Dr. Charles Sinkala on the phone line. Good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us. Just give us your take on the situation in Zimbabwe currently, the military taking over the broadcaster and saying that they are taking it upon themselves to protect Robert Mugabe, President Mugabe rather, from criminal activities.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers. Look, we all anticipated that the West should, though we never thought that it should happen in this way, but, you know, I think President Robert Mugabe pushed really hard into his people to accept his regime. Most of all those military generals were the freedom fighters in the 1970s, 1960s. including the relieved vice president. And, the situation there currently is because the President Robert Mugabe, he does not want anyone to take over from him, and sometimes it's difficult for him to even to run the government. I'll give you an example of what happened last week prior to the firing of his deputy vice president, Emerson Mnangagwa. After it's like they gave him a document to sign that the vice president has to be relieved from his duties, and he just signed. People have got sources who are saying he signs documents without even realizing what he has signed. Among other things, one of my reliable sources from Zimbabwe in the government and the cabinet, they said it's like he's dozing, and if he wakes up, he signs something, then he keeps dozing. So he hasn't been fully managing his country, including his people properly. Mm-hmm. And the incident which I'm talking about, where he signed about the firing of his deputy vice president, Emerson Mnangagwa, is after he fired him on Monday, on the 6th, and the following day he had a cabinet meeting trying to discuss the stability in his party and the government. He actually requested, but where is the vice president, Emerson Mnangagwa, in that meeting? And one of the senior government officials, they had to go to him and whisper that you actually relieved him from his duties. So this is a serious and worse situation which we've never faced in Africa. But if need be, the military, going to the military now is they are the custodians of the law of each and every country, because they protect the sovereignty of the country. And though the president is the commander-in-chief, the army, they are the ones who are in charge of the countries. Should the civilians, including the president, fail to run the country properly. Mm-hmm. That's why the joining of the army, or even threatening there, they've been trying by all means, the reliable sources inside this government, they've been trying by all means to negotiate with the government. Can you find a proper transition of power?
Well, Dr. Senkala, I do apologize. I'm going to have to just interject there. We're running out of time. But thank you so much for joining us on Vuka Africa and for your analysis this morning. That was Dr. Charles Senkala, international political analyst, just giving us his take on the situation in Zimbabwe, mentioning that indeed the army is ultimately responsible for maintaining, upholding the constitution.